never thought my daughter would be capable of plotting someone's downfall. That's what I whispered to myself the night I found the notebook, the one tucked beneath her mattress, wrapped in a scarf I had given her years ago, before I even opened it. I knew it held something I wasn't supposed to see. The edges were creased, pages swollen from use, secrets pressed into paper. But let me start at the beginning, before fear and disbelief became part of my parenting vocabulary. Back when everything still felt normal. My name is Elaine. I'm a single mother of one, my daughter, Mariah. She's 16 years old, and for most of her life, she's been my sunshine on the cloudiest days. She laughs easily, loves fiercely, and believes the best in everyone. Maybe that was the problem. Back then, our routine was simple. I worked the early shift at a small accounting office downtown, enough to keep the lights on and food in the fridge, but not enough to ever quite exhale. Still, I found joy in the small things. The smell of bacon sizzling before sunrise, the soft hum of our old refrigerator, the way Mariah's messy handwriting decorated the grocery list on the counter. We'd have dinner together every night. Not fancy meals, spaghetti, roasted chicken, a pot of chili if payday was good, but meals filled with laughter and late-night confessions. She used to tell me everything. At least, I thought she did. The change began when he walked into her life. Ethan. When Mariah, he was quiet at first, the kind of boy who wears a hood indoors and avoids eye contact. He had a mop of curly brown hair that always looked damp, like he'd just run through rain. There was a heaviness around him, a weight someone his age shouldn't already be carrying. First mentioned him, her voice carried this soft excitement, the kind that makes a parent's heart tighten with both fear and hope. Mom, he's different, she told me one night while wiping dishes. He gets me. I asked her what that meant. She just shrugged, smiling at her reflection in the kitchen window. You'll see. I did see. Just not what she expected me to. Ethan started spending time at our home, always slumped on the couch, eyes glued to his phone, barely saying a word. He'd smirk at things Mariah said, then follow it with a comment that sounded like a joke, but wasn't. Wow, you're wearing that? You're so dramatic all the time. No wonder you don't have many friends. He'd flick her hair, not playfully, but like it annoyed him. And every time, she'd laugh it off, cheeks flushed. I would clench my jaw behind a tight smile, stomach twisting. After he left one evening, I finally asked her, "Sweetheart, does he always talk to you like that?" She paused just a beat too long, then nodded with a practiced grin. "Oh, it's nothing. That's just how he is." He's sarcastic. It's funny, but it wasn't funny. It was little cuts slicing deeper each day. The first big argument we ever had was about him. Mariah came home late, 2 hours past curfew, shoes muddy, mascara smudged like she'd been crying. I sat at the dining table waiting, fingers drumming anxiously against the wood. When she opened the door, I didn't yell. I didn't have to. The disappointment in my eyes did the talking. "Where were you?" I asked gently. "With Ethan," she whispered. "And he couldn't drive you home on time?" Her face tightened. "He doesn't have a car. So he let you walk alone? In the dark?" "You're overreacting, Mom." Her voice rose sharp defensive. "You don't even know him." I took a breath, steadying my voice. "I don't have to. I know how he makes you feel." Mariah looked down. Her hands trembled slightly as she shoved her phone deeper into her pocket. "He loves me," she murmured. "He just gets angry sometimes, and I make him angry when I don't listen." My heart dropped. "No, baby, that's not love." She stepped back, eyes blazing. "You don't get it. You never get it." And she stormed into her room, slamming the door hard enough to rattle a picture frame off the wall. I stared at that fallen frame, a photo of her at 10 years old. Paint, smeared on her shirt, missing a front tooth, but smiling without fear. I picked it up, brushing the dust away, wishing I could protect that version of her again. Over the next weeks, I watched the light in her eyes dim. She wore long sleeves, even when it was warm outside. She lost weight, not dramatically, but enough for a mother to notice. She barely touched her dinner. And that notebook of hers, she started taking it everywhere, clutching it like a life vest. I tried talking to her more than once. "Are you okay? I'm here if you need me. You're not alone." Every time, she'd plaster on that heartbreaking smile and insist she was fine. Fine. That word, the biggest lie a woman learns to tell the world. But mothers, we feel the truth before we see it. One night, after she had fallen asleep on the couch, curled up like she used to when she was little, her sleeve slipped up just enough for me to notice. Thin, red marks along her wrist. Not deep, but angry. I froze. A ringing filled my ears, drowning out everything but my pulse. I carried her to bed and tucked the blanket under her chin, my hand lingering on her forehead, as if touch alone could heal what I didn't yet understand. That was the moment I decided I needed to know what was happening, even if it meant crossing a line. So the next day, when she rushed out the door for school, notebook clutched against her chest, like always, she forgot it on the kitchen chair. I stared at it. An ordinary, beat-up notebook. Stickers peeling, spiral edges bent. And as much as I told myself to respect her privacy, I couldn't. Not when the stakes were this high. My hands shook as I opened it. The first words I saw weren't notes or doodles. They were a title written in bold, dark ink. Phase 1, Breaking Ethan Carter. My breath stopped. Pages filled with detailed steps, observations, timelines, a blueprint of psychological warfare, spoken in my daughter's handwriting. She wasn't just planning to leave him. She was planning revenge. And it terrified me, because I didn't know whether to feel proud or absolutely heartbroken. I stood there in the kitchen, the morning sun warming the tiled floor beneath my bare feet, staring at this version of my daughter I didn't recognize. Page after page was filled with anger disguised as strategy. Bullet points, dates, even conversations she had with him recorded like evidence in a courtroom. His insecurities, his habits, his friends and who he cared about most. She had written down, "He thinks I need him. Soon, he'll know he's the weak one." My fingers traced the indentation of her words. They were written hard, like each stroke was punching the page. I could almost feel the weight of every decision she had made in silence. There was another sentence circled several times. "He doesn't get to win." My throat tightened. This wasn't teenage frustration anymore. This was pain sharp and untreated. I closed the notebook quickly as I heard the front door opening. Mariah came rushing back in, breathless. I forgot my... Her words stopped as her eyes locked on the notebook in my hands. She froze. I froze. The silence between us felt like a fault line. "Mom," she whispered, voice fragile. "Why would you touch my things?" I set the notebook down gently, palms open. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have looked. But baby, I saw your wrists. I see how you're hurting. And I can't just pretend everything is okay." Mariah's face shifted, anger blooming fast, like a storm cloud swallowing the sun. "You had no right," she snapped, snatching the notebook away. "You don't get to read my thoughts and twist them." "I'm not twisting anything," I said quietly. "I'm scared for you." She hugged the notebook to her chest, trembling. "You're only scared of losing control. This is my life, my choices." I took a step closer. "Your life shouldn't have to include revenge." Her eyes flickered a crack in her anger where sadness lived. "He ruined me," she whispered. Those 3 words, they cut deeper than anything she had written. Before I could respond, she zipped the notebook into her bag and rushed out the door again, this time without looking back. The door shutting behind her sounded like a warning. I had underestimated the damage. That evening, she didn't come home on time. I paced the living room, checking my phone every few seconds. I called her twice, no answer. I tried Ethan. His number had been blocked from my phone months ago by Mariah, but desperation made me unblock it. He didn't answer either. My heartbeat echoed inside my skull, each passing minute tightening the dread inside me. At 10:17 p.m., headlights flashed through the living room window. Ethan's beat-up sedan. Mariah stepped out first, red-eyed, clutching her arms as if she were trying to hold herself together. Ethan walked around the car, voice raised, arguing with her. I rushed to the porch. "Mariah," I called. She turned, flinching at my voice. Ethan glared at me like I had somehow interrupted him mid-sentence of something he believed he had every right to say. "What did you do to her?" I demanded. He rolled his eyes. "Chill, lady. She's fine." But she wasn't. The way she stood, shoulders curled forward like she was bracing against invisible punches. The way she avoided my eyes. I stepped closer toward Ethan. "She doesn't need you speaking for her," he scoffed. "Right. Because you've got it all figured out." Before I could respond, Mariah grabbed my sleeve lightly. "Mom," she whispered. "Please, just go inside." It wasn't a request. It was a plea for a pause, a moment to catch her breath before I made everything worse. I swallowed the urge to pull her behind me and shut the door on that boy forever. Instead, I nodded slowly and stepped back, palms trembling. But I didn't go far. I stood at the window, hidden behind the curtains, watching their silhouettes. His movements grew more animated, arms flailing, head thrown back in frustration. Mariah kept shrinking smaller and smaller until she looked like a shadow. They argued for another 3 minutes before he finally stormed off, tires screeching against the asphalt. Mariah stayed on the sidewalk long after he was gone. She looked up at the sky like she was asking it for a reason to keep trying. When she came inside, I didn't bombard her with questions. I just opened my arms. And this time, she walked into them. Her body shook against me, silent sobs breaking through, one gasp at a time. I stroked her hair the way I used to when she was a child. "It's okay," I whispered. "I've got you." She pulled back after a moment, wiping at her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "I didn't want you to see me like this." "You never have to apologize for hurting," I replied. She bit her lip, hesitating like she was on the edge of a confession. "I just need to finish what I started," she said quietly. "And then this pain will stop." A chill slid down my spine. "What do you mean?" I asked, but she stepped away, shaking her head. "You wouldn't understand." She went upstairs, leaving me alone with that sentence echoing in my mind. "Finish what I started." That night, sleep never came. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft creaks of the house. Every sound felt like a warning. Every shadow felt alive. Why revenge? Why him? Why this path? I thought about the old Mariah, the girl who once wrote love letters to stray cats she fed behind the school. The girl who volunteered at the community center teaching little kids how to paint. The girl who believed no one was beyond redemption. What had he taken from her to turn love into a battlefield? The next morning, she barely spoke. She grabbed her notebook, slung her bag over her shoulder, and headed toward the door. "Mariah," I said firmly. She stopped, didn't turn around. "I know you think revenge will make the pain disappear," I said, choosing my words like stepping stones. "But revenge doesn't heal. It just spreads the wound." Her fingers gripped the doorknob tighter. She whispered, "Maybe I want him to bleed too." And then she walked out, leaving me breathless in the silence. Later that afternoon, I got a call from the school. My stomach dropped before I even answered. "Hello?" A shaky voice responded. "Mrs. Bennett? This is Principal Harris. We need you to come in immediately. There's been an incident involving your daughter." The room spun slightly as dread settled deep in my chest. "What happened?" There was a pause too long. "Please, just get here." I grabbed my keys and rushed to the car, my heartbeat pounding every mile of the drive. I didn't know what I'd find, but I knew one thing. The revenge she had planned, it might have already begun. The school office smelled like old carpet and anxiety, a faint mix of pencil shavings, burnt coffee, and the nervous energy of teenagers waiting for punishment. I could feel my heartbeat in my palms as I gripped the strap of my purse. Principal Harris, a kind woman with gray curls and eyes too tired for her age, motioned for me to sit. Across from us, the guidance counselor shuffled a stack of papers, avoiding my eyes. That was never a good sign. "Where is Mariah?" I asked, voice tight. "She's in the nurse's office right now," the principal said carefully. "Nurse's office. Not detention, not the counselor room." A chill slithered down my spine. "What happened?" I pressed. Principal Harris folded her hands. "There was a conflict in the courtyard between Mariah and her boyfriend." Boyfriend. My stomach twisted hearing that word used so generously on him. "Is she hurt?" I whispered. "No," she said quickly. "Not physically, but the situation escalated in a concerning way. Ethan ended up humiliated, and now his parents are requesting disciplinary action." Humiliated. The word lingered. I leaned forward. "What did she do?" The principal glanced at the counselor before answering. "Mariah used private information about Ethan. Personal details she gathered to publicly confront him. She exposed things he told her in confidence. It caused quite a scene." My chest constricted. I imagined it. Her voice trembling, anger boiling into control. Ethan shrinking as his secrets became everyone else's gossip. A courtroom formed by classmates. Phones recording. His shame played like entertainment. It sounded exactly like the first phase of her notebook plan. "And Ethan?" I asked. He reacted poorly. He yelled, threw his backpack. Security had to separate them. Of course he did. Toxic boys rarely take accountability. They break whatever's closest instead. I swallowed the storm in my throat. "May I see her?" The principal nodded. Mariah was sitting on the edge of the nurse's cot, knees drawn to her chest, staring at the wall like it had betrayed her too. Her mascara smeared under her eyes, Hair frizzed from stress or tears. Maybe both. Sweetheart, I whispered, stepping toward her. She didn't look up. I didn't hit him. I know, I said gently, kneeling beside her. But something happened. Her jaw tightened. I just told the truth. I reached for her hand, but she pulled it away and hugged her legs tighter. Did it make you feel better? I asked softly. She blinked, slow, tired, for a second. And then it hurt worse. Her voice cracked like thin glass. I sat beside her, the cot springs creaking. Mariah, talk to me. What are you trying to fix by breaking him? Now she turned, eyes burning, not with anger this time, but with wounded desperation. He made me feel worthless, Mom, she whispered, like I was lucky he wanted me. He called me annoying, moody, needy. He said I was just like my dad, someone everyone eventually gives up on. My heart clenched painfully, and every time he hurt me, I told myself it was my fault. Tears slid down her cheeks. So I wrote down every awful thing he ever told me, every weakness he admitted. And I thought, maybe if I used those things against him, maybe I wouldn't feel so small anymore. I brushed her hair back, my hand trembling. Oh, baby, pain doesn't disappear when you pass it on. It just grows more roots. She pressed her forehead into her knees. I just wanted to feel in control again. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders, slow and soft. You don't have to get control by destroying someone. You get control by choosing yourself. She cried harder, silent tears that soaked the fabric of her jeans. After a while, the nurse knocked and said we were free to go. As we walked to the car, Mariah stayed close like she was afraid the world might break her if we left any space between us. When we got home, she went straight upstairs. I needed a moment, so I stayed in the kitchen, leaning against the counter until my knees stopped shaking. A part of me felt relieved that she had stood up for herself. But the bigger part, the mother part, was terrified of what she might be capable of when vengeance felt like her only lifeline. 2 hours later, I carried a tray up to her room, a cup of chamomile tea, and some crackers. The door was slightly open. I knocked gently. No response. I stepped inside and found her asleep, curled up with that notebook clutched in her arms, as if she feared it might be stolen from her dreams. Quietly, I set the tray down on her desk. The notebook was right there, within reach. I knew I shouldn't, but mothers always need more information than they're given. Slowly, I slid it from under her arm. The newest pages were darker words, pressed deeper. Smudges from tears or frustration. A heading stood out. Phase 2. Public exposure. The plan had already begun. Today's scene at school was just the start. I flipped another page, and my breath stopped. Photographs, screenshots, messages him cursing at her, blaming her, admitting things he'd never want seen. And then, a list titled, The Final Phase. Underneath, only one line. Make sure he never hurts another girl again. My pulse hammered. The edges of the page felt sharp as I held it. This wasn't just a teenage outburst. This was a mission, one she wasn't finished with. A floorboard creaked behind me. I turned sharply. Mariah stood in the doorway, face pale, tears fresh but eyes fierce. She looked at the notebook in my hands. You don't get to take this, she whispered. I swallowed. I'm not trying to take anything. I'm trying to understand. You can't, she hissed, because you don't know what he did. Then tell me. I stepped closer. Let me carry some of this with you. She shook her head. This isn't your fight. I went very still. Mariah, I said softly, when your child is hurting, it becomes the mother's fight too. Her lip quivered. Anger and pain battled behind her eyes. Then she whispered, you weren't there when he grabbed me. The world dropped out from under me. What? My voice was barely audible. Her hand lifted to her wrist. Those marks and understanding hit like a punch. He squeezed so hard, she whispered. Because I said no. Because I didn't want to do what he wanted. And he said if I told anyone, he would tell everyone. I begged for it. I felt something inside me burn, something ancient, protective, explosive. She breathed out a trembling confession. And that's why he deserves every moment of humiliation he's getting. Silence fell heavy, heavy enough to change us both. I finally spoke. I will not let him ever lay a hand on you again. She stared at me, wary, hopeful, scared. And I will not let you become someone you're not because of him. She took her notebook back slowly, hugging it again. But this time, she didn't step away. Instead, she whispered, what do I do now, Mom? Her voice so young, so wounded, broke me. I wrapped her into my arms as tight as she'd let me. We heal, I said. Together. But I didn't yet know what healing would look like. And the next time Ethan crossed her path, I feared healing wouldn't be the only thing on her mind. The days that followed were quiet. Too quiet. Mariah stayed home from school, with a doctor's note I requested, claiming she needed recovery time from the incident. It wasn't a lie, just not the whole truth. She spent most of her time cocooned in blankets, earbuds, and trying to drown out memories. Every now and then, I'd hear the tiny sniffles she tried to hide. I made her soup, sat with her through movies she barely watched, braided her hair the way she used to beg me to when she was little. Sometimes, she'd allow her head to lean on my shoulder, and I'd pretend that tiny bit of closeness was enough to glue us back together. But healing is never quiet. Not really. It fights from the inside. On the fourth day, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her phone screen with her jaw clenched tight. "What's going on?" I asked gently. She didn't look up. "He's spreading rumors," she whispered, saying I'm obsessed, crazy, that I made everything up. My heart sunk. I had seen this coming. Boys like him rarely let go of power quietly. He says I hit him, that I threatened him. Her voice was brittle. "People are calling me a psycho." I pulled out the chair beside her. "You are none of those things." She laughed bitterly, no humor in it. Funny how the world believes whoever talks louder. The notifications kept buzzing one after the other. The digital version of being cornered in a hallway. I reached for her phone, but she yanked it back. "Don't, Mom." "All right," I said softly. "Then tell me what you need." She stared at her hands, nails bitten to the quick. "I need him to stop." She swallowed hard. "I need to feel safe again." That was the moment I realized justice wasn't enough. We needed protection. That evening, after she had finally fallen asleep, I made myself a cup of tea. The herbal kind that promises calm but rarely delivers, and sat at the dining table with my laptop open. I searched. What to do if a boyfriend is abusive to your daughter? Legal rights for minors. Harassment school. Restraining order for emotional abuse. The results were overwhelming laws. Resources. Support networks. I took notes just like Mariah had, but my plan wasn't meant to destroy. It was meant to save. I called a local support organization and left a message for a counselor. My voice shook the whole time. I was preparing for peace, but life was preparing for war. The next morning, I drove Mariah to school myself. She wore a hoodie pulled low over her forehead, sleeves covering her wrists. She looked smaller than she had in years, like the trauma had pressed her back into childhood. "I'll pick you up right after last period," I told her. "Okay," she said, though her eyes didn't meet mine. I wanted to tell her, be strong, but she already had been. Much more than any mother would hope her child ever needs to be. Instead, I whispered, "I'm proud of you." She blinked fast, like that sentiment was too delicate to hold. Then she stepped out and joined the stream of students, none of whom knew the whole truth. As she disappeared through the doors, I exhaled a shaky prayer. "Please let this day be gentle." The school counselor called me a few hours later. Voice urgent. "Mrs. Bennett, there's been another confrontation." The ground rushed away beneath me again. "Is she hurt?" "No. But the situation is escalating." Ethan and a few of his friends cornered Mariah behind the gym. They yelled at her, and one of the boys knocked the notebook from her hands. Her notebook, her shield, her story, her proof. "And?" I pushed through clenched teeth. "She fought back this time," the counselor said, almost impressed. She told them she wasn't afraid anymore, that she'd make sure everyone knew how he treated her. I felt pride and fear wrestling in my chest. "I'm coming," I said, grabbing my keys. By the time I reached the school, they had separated everyone. Mariah and I walked silently to the car, anger radiating off her like heat. The moment the doors shut, she spoke. "He laughed," she said, voice shaking. "He said I can't touch him, that no one will ever believe me, because he's the good guy." I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. "That boy is wrong." I forced every word out evenly. "We're going to make sure the right people hear the truth." She didn't answer, but she didn't argue. That evening, while making dinner, I heard her door open upstairs. I didn't hear footsteps, just the soft click of a camera shutter, then another. My heart dropped. I went up the stairs slowly, like approaching a frightened animal. Her door was ajar. Mariah stood in front of her dresser mirror, holding up her wrist. The dark bruises, nearly faded, but still visible if you looked, were reflected in the glass. She snapped another photo. I stepped in gently. What are you doing, sweetie? She lowered her phone, tears forming. He keeps saying I'm lying, so I'm documenting everything. Her voice was steady, determined. This is my proof, she said. My truth. She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her hoodie, then looked at me really. Looked for the first time in days. I'm not letting him win. Something inside me swelled pride, sorrow, fear, all tangled. You already won, I whispered, stepping forward. Because you're still standing. Her lip tremble. Then she did something that nearly broke me in the best way. She handed me her phone. Help me, she said quietly. Not revenge, not distraction. Help. I nodded, tears warm on my cheeks. We'll do this together, I promised. But the right way. No secrets. No hate controlling us. Her shoulders finally relaxed just a fraction, but enough to show she believed me. For the first time in a long time. Hope entered the room. Later that night, I reached for her notebook again, this time with her watching me. I opened to the darkest pages. Phase 2. Final phase. The words felt heavy. I think, I said softly, we need to replace this plan. Mariah hesitated. With what? I closed the notebook gently. With a new ending? A tear slipped down, her cheek silent, but not hopeless. She nodded and quietly whispered, I'm ready. I took her hand. But what I didn't know then was that Ethan wasn't done, and his next move would bring everything crashing into the light. I didn't sleep a minute that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Amber's grin, that smug, triumphant smirk she wore as she held my son hostage with her lies. The soft glow from the hallway nightlight crept under my bedroom door as if reminding me I still had a home to protect. And that's when my mind clicked into place. If they wanted a war, they had just chosen the wrong mother to mess with. The next morning, I cooked breakfast like normal. Scrambled eggs, toast, sliced apples, the kind of breakfast a mother makes when she wants her child to know life isn't falling apart. Ethan sat at the table, still dressed in yesterday's wrinkled school uniform, shoulders stiff and eyes cold. You're going to be late, I said softly. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at me like I was the villain in his story. My heart constricted, but I didn't let it show. Eat, I whispered. Why? He finally snapped. So you can bribe me to like you again? The fork clattered in my shaking hands. Baby, I never lied to you. He laughed, a cruel, humorless sound I never thought I'd hear from my son. That's what liars always say. As soon as Ethan left, I grabbed my purse, locked the door behind me, and drove straight to the county clerk's office. If David wanted legal battles, fine. I'd come prepared. I requested updated property records, including updates to my late father's estate distribution. That was step 1. Then I went to a private investigator I trusted from years back, a friend of my father's. His name was Sam Cook, a man with silver curls, tired eyes, and a moral compass that somehow still pointed north in this broken world. What did he take? Sam asked, cutting straight through the small talk. Not what who, I said, voice tightening. He's poisoning my son against me. Sam sat back and looked at me for a long moment. You want the truth documented, he concluded. Everything that's actually going on. I nodded. And David's financial skeletons? He added with a raised brow. Oh, yes, I whispered. Every last bone. By that afternoon, Sam had already found the first crack in David and Jasmine's perfect act. David was broke. Not just broke drowning. Gambling debts, business loans in default, a hidden account transferring funds into Jasmine's name. And worse, multiple messages between David and Jasmine discussing the inheritance problem. Jasmine wrote, we get the rest once the mom is out of the picture. Ethan will choose us. Kids adapt. He just needs to see her true colors. My hands shook as I scrolled through screenshot after screenshot. My breath burned hot and uneven. And then the dagger, a family photo I'd taken. The 3 of us smiling. Ethan missing one front tooth forwarded by David with a message. She was always just holding his money for us. Us. They weren't just trying to replace me. They were trying to erase me. That night, Ethan came home late again. Same excuse. Hanging with Dad. Same venom in his tone. But I had prepared something. Sweetheart, I said carefully, I have something to show you. He rolled his eyes and crossed his arms. More eyes? I didn't answer. I just unlocked my phone and placed it in front of him. He didn't want to look, not at first. But curiosity chipped away at his anger. He picked up the phone. His eyes dragged across the messages. One line, then another, then another. When he reached the part about once the mom is out of the picture, his hands began to tremble. His voice cracked. The sound of fear, betrayal, realization, his whole world tilting. My heart shattered because he was just a child caught in an adult war. "I'm sorry," he whispered, tears welling. I didn't know. I wrapped my arms around him, and this time, he didn't pull away. But I wasn't done. Not by half. "Listen to me, Ethan," I said, gently lifting his chin, so his eyes met mine. "Your father and Jasmine think they can use you. They think love is something they can manipulate." He swallowed, gaze fierce through tears. "What do we do now?" "We fight smart," I replied. "No shouting, no scenes, no more tears wasted on people who don't deserve them." I brushed his hair from his forehead just like I used to when he was little. "We let them think they've won." A spark of understanding lit in his eyes. "And then we take everything back," he finished. I smiled, proud, heartbroken, ready. Step by step, we'd expose the truth. We'd reclaim our home. We'd make sure they regret ever trying to tear us apart. This wasn't revenge. This was justice. And a mother fighting for her child is the most dangerous force on earth. The plan we made was quiet and careful, the opposite of what had filled the pages of Mariah's notebook. No public shaming, no viral posts, no traps, just truth, documented and delivered to the right people who could actually do something about it. We started by going to the guidance counselor together. I sat in the small office while Mariah explained, voice shaking at first, then steadier as she found each word. She handed over the photos, the screenshots, the log of dates and times. I watched the counselor's face change, first compassionate, then concerned, then resolute. "You did the right thing," she said softly, folding Mariah's paper into an envelope. "We'll call his parents and the principal. We'll make sure he's not left alone with her. And we'll arrange a mediation meeting." Mediation sounded clinical and calm, two things I desperately wanted to be true. Outside the window, kids laughed and chased each other, oblivious to the small legal ecosystem picking away at teenage cruelty. We also reached out to the school resource officer. He was a quiet man, with gentle hands and an even gentler voice. He listened, took notes, and told us about reporting harassment and keeping a paper trail. He told us what the law could and couldn't compel the school to do. Sometimes systems move slowly. Sometimes they move too slowly. But they move better when people don't let them rest. The first consequence came the next day. Not with a headline or a viral video, but in the hush of the administrative office. Ethan was pulled from his classes for a meeting with his parents, the principal, and the counselor. Mariah sat in the waiting room with me, fingers laced around a paper cup of peppermint tea like it might steady her. When the meeting ended, the principal came out to speak with us. "We've decided on a 2-week suspension for Ethan," she said, "and we'll be arranging some restorative practices counseling for him, support for Mariah, and a no-contact agreement." No contact. The words felt like medicine. Not everything, but something. Word moved faster than paperwork. Within hours, the school whisper chain had spread. The boy who'd been charming and mean was now the one being disciplined. Friends who had once sided with him looked confused. Others didn't. Rumors make messy beds when they fall into corners, and some of Ethan's friends wanted clean sheets again. But consequences are rarely neat. There were parents who called the school angry and defensive. There were students who said Mariah had overreacted. There were others who quietly slid her a note in the hallway. "I'm sorry it happened," with a folded origami heart tucked inside. The nastiest reaction, I learned, was not from students, but from the small, cruel kingdom of social media. Ethan's friends had taken snippets of the courtyard confrontation and trimmed them into a loop that painted Mariah as unstable. For a moment, the comments section felt like an open wound. But there was a balance. Mariah's friends rallied, posting their own accounts and screenshots of the messages Ethan had sent, the ones where he'd admitted things he later tried to deny. A local parent posted an editorial about believing victims and the importance of mental health resources in schools. People began using our real words, not edited clips. "He made me feel worthless. He threatened me. She is not a liar." The community's response surprised me. Old Mrs. Carmichael from down the street brought over a pie and a single sheet of paper folded into thirds. Inside was a short note. "You did right by your girl. You did right by truth." That small kindness felt enormous. Ethan's parents, once distant, polite figures I'd see at recitals, changed too. I got a message from them that started with, "We didn't know," and turned into something like an apology. Whether it was genuine or a reflexive attempt to deflect public scrutiny, I couldn't tell. But it started a conversation. It forced them to look, however briefly, at what their son had done and the part they had played by ignoring it. There were tense days. There were angry texts and a parent who demanded we drop the matter. There were nights I lay awake, thinking of the power of gossip and the fragility of teenage reputations. I worried, often, that in trying to protect her, I would make her an example, a cautionary tale traded over coffee. But then there were small, human things that reassured me. Teachers who moved Mariah's seat to the front of the classroom so she'd feel safe. A lunchroom table where her friends took turns sitting with her. A counselor who checked in weekly, not just to process the incident, but to help her rebuild trust and learn boundaries. And slowly, something shifted in Ethan, too. For him, consequence meant time alone with his actions. Suspensions forced him into therapy with the school counselor. When he came home, I could see the fatigue of someone taking a mirror to himself for the first time. He didn't approach our house at first. When he did, it was with a caution I hadn't seen before. One afternoon, his mother came to the kitchen while I was making tea. Her voice was small and shaky. "We're getting him help," she said. "We didn't want to believe it. We thought he was just a boy, being silly." I listened. I felt the ache of her confession, the embarrassment of realizing you raised a child who hurt someone you loved. But beneath that was a thread of accountability. She wanted to know how to help him, not hide him. "We all have the chance to change," I said slowly. "But he has to do the hard work. Time," I learned, "is not an enemy or a cure, it is an ingredient. Restitution looks different for everyone. For Ethan, it started with apologies in private, with counseling sessions, with reading and learning. For us, it was about rebuilding trust and teaching Mariah to name her boundaries, to refuse the idea that love requires self-erasure. There were days when I still caught myself scanning headlines, waiting for the next blow. There were nights I worried about what this moment might mean for her future college applications, friendships, the weight of being labeled. But those fears, when shared and met with community support, began to shrink. The public consequence was not a spectacle that destroyed a boy's life. It was a mirror held up harsh, honest, that forced people to look. Some recoiled, some softened. And through it all, my daughter learned that her voice mattered, and that justice could be patient, measured, and dignified. We had wanted humiliation for him once, in the darker chapters of that notebook. What we got instead was responsibility, and, unexpectedly, a beginning of repair. The lesson was quieter than revenge, but louder than any viral clip. Consequences can teach. If people are lucky and willing, they can learn from them. Healing didn't come on a dramatic day or with a clear finish line. It arrived slowly, in ordinary moments we almost missed. Like the afternoon Mariah came home with paint on her fingertips, streaks of lavender and sunlight yellow. "I joined the art club again," she told me with a tentative smile. She hadn't touched a brush in months. Creativity had once been her joy, before she began twisting herself into someone tiny for a boy who wanted her dim. Or the evening she sat beside me on the couch, unprompted, leaning her head gently against my shoulder, the way she used to when she was little. We watched some silly sitcom reruns, laughing at jokes we didn't even find funny. We were laughing because laughter felt like breathing again. Therapy helped too, not in a movie magic way, but in small, honest discoveries. She learned how manipulation can sound like love when you're young and hopeful. She learned to call things what they are. That wasn't jealousy. It was control. She learned that a sorry without change is only noise. And I learned something too, that my job wasn't to stop her from experiencing pain, but to walk through the recovery with her. Not to fix everything, but to stay beside her while she fixed what she could. One afternoon, months later, something happened that I never expected. Ethan asked to speak with us. We sat in the counselor's office, the afternoon sun, warm through the blinds, casting slanted shadows across the carpet. He looked smaller than I remembered. His hoodie sleeves covered his hands completely, like he was trying to hide the parts of himself that used to lash out. "I was awful to you," he began, voice cracking. He didn't look at Mariah at first, but when he finally lifted his eyes, they were full of something. Raw. Guilt. Maybe. Shame. Definitely. "You didn't deserve any of it," he continued. "And the suspension, counseling, it made me think. I thought you were trying to ruin my life, but I was the one ruining yours." He swallowed. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I needed to say that I'm sorry, and I'm trying to change." Mariah didn't speak right away, and I didn't fill the silence for her. Finally, She nodded, steady and sure. I hope you do change, she said softly. For the next person in your life. And for yourself. No theatrics. No sobbing reconciliation. Just honesty, the kind that leaves everyone quieter after. When we left the meeting, she slipped her hand into mine. Not as a frightened girl, but as a young woman choosing peace over bitterness. Spring arrived soon after that, tulips pushing their colors into the world like they'd forgotten winter even existed. Mariah spent more afternoons outside, sitting in a patch of sun in our backyard, a journal open across her knees. Not a notebook full of revenge anymore, but blank pages waiting for new stories. One evening, she came into the kitchen while I was washing dishes and held up one of her paintings, a girl sitting near a cliff's edge, wind in her hair, eyes set on the horizon. It's not finished yet, she said. It's beautiful, I told her, drying my hands. She hesitated, then whispered the part that mattered. She's supposed to be free. I pulled her into a hug, breathing in the scent of fresh acrylic paint and hope. You are, I murmured. You really are. Some scars remain little reminders of a chapter that nearly broke her. But scars also mean healing has happened. They are the proof that hurt didn't win. And now, she sets boundaries like they are treasures valuable and non-negotiable. She spends time with friends who lift her higher instead of pulling her smaller. She laughs loudly, almost carelessly, like her heart isn't afraid anymore. As for me, I learned that protection and control are not the same thing. That a mother can't stop every storm, only teach her child how to build shelter, how to walk back into the sunshine when the clouds break. Love isn't saving someone from the world. Love is helping them save themselves. If someone had told me a year ago that my daughter would rise from that heartbreak stronger, wiser, and more certain of her worth, I don't think I would have believed them. Back then, every day felt like a battle between holding on and letting go, between fear and faith, between wanting to protect her and understanding she'd have to choose herself before any of us could save her. But today, I look at her, and I see a girl who no longer shrinks to make others feel tall. A girl who knows that love isn't supposed to hurt. A girl who learned that revenge might feel powerful in the moment, but healing will always feel powerful longer. And I learned something too. Something every parent eventually must accept. Our children will love people we don't understand. They will trust people who may not deserve them. And they will fall hard before they learn how to stand truly tall. All we can do is be the place they come home to. Mariah's notebook doesn't live in a dark drawer anymore. She tore out the revenge pages, fed them into the fireplace one cold morning, and watched the ash drift upward like old pain taking flight. Now, that same notebook holds new dreams, plans for art school, lists of road trip destinations, little scribbles of joy she wants to collect. She's not defined by someone who tried to dim her. She's defined by the light she chose to turn back on. So let me ask you, if you found a secret that showed someone you love was hurting, would you confront the truth? Or would you look away and hope they find their way out alone? Tell me in the comments. I'll be right here, listening. And if my story meant something to you today, if it made you think of someone you love, someone who needs a reminder that they are worth more than the pain they carry, please support the channel, subscribe, like, and share. Your compassion helps stories like mine reach someone who needs to hear them. Thank you for sitting with me through this journey. I hope you never forget. Love protects, love heals, and love, real love, helps us rise again.